Hello, you are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I am your host, Adrian, and today I will be talking about the Capcom Next showcase that happened earlier this week and more. Afterwards, be sure to subscribe to be notified when future episodes are released and show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Thank you for joining. So, another glorious Friday for us once again. We are back, and right now I'm on a 4-day weekend thanks to 4th of July. So, I plan on spending as much time playing video games, of course. But I want to take a moment and talk about a few things this week. For one, I was genuinely surprised when I woke up this morning to see that a Shiba Inu named Peanut Butter completed a speed run on a 1994 baseball game. I believe the game is called Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Baseball League Baseball. I've never played any sports game that came out before like Mario Sluggers. Like I've never done that. So um, I think that it's pretty great accomplishment for any animal. So congratulations on Peanut Butter. Of course, the dog had direction from their human, but that's why we play co-op games too. The link will be available in below with the video. So make sure to give Peanut Butter a watch. That's pretty cool. I like to see more animals taking on video game challenges like Elden Ring or Mario Party games or something like that. It would be pretty fun to see a completed by a doggo, and that's pretty cool. And other than that, we had the Capcom showcase, the Capcom Next showcase that happened, I believe it was on Wednesday or Thursday. I was probably asleep during it. They usually have those, during Japan time. But they had a small bit of news to show off. I believe early in the week, maybe like the day before, they had a leak or an announcement already for the Dead Rising remaster, the deluxe remaster that was shown off during the game, the showcase. And I'm super excited to see Dead Rising come back because it was on a small decline, I think, ever since Dead Rising 3, and a lot of the newer games since then just didn't really kind of hit that same like sandbox, like you're going into like a supermarket mall kind of. That was the best part about Dead Rising was that kind of exploration in those cool areas with the zombies and you just killing as many as you can as you explore and finding secrets like weapons and psychopaths to fight. All that was really fun in all of the Dead Rising games. I even think that's probably something that's still pretty good in a lot of the newer games, Dead Rising 3 and 4 and whatever else was around at that time. I don't know what else came out around like Dead Rising 4. And it certainly seems like they're putting in a lot of love to this game because they had like a lot of talks on what they touched up on the game. This seems like it's very much in the same vein as Dead Space remake, where they're trying to keep the core experience as authentic as possible, which is great to see. And I would love to see a little bit more on what they're doing for like making this game a little more friendly to a casual audience. Because if anybody doesn't know, Dead Rising is like a speed run kind of game. You are on a time limit. Some games have that. Like the only one I can think of right now is like Disco Elysium to some degree, where you have like a background clock, like Majora's Mask as well from Legend of Zelda, where you have like this timer in the background and you have to try and do as many things within the game before the countdown like resets. And typically, like, when it resets, the whole game restarts and you got to do everything over again. So sometimes in games like that, things like carry over like Dead Rising 1, I don't think had any specific like mechanic for this. Dead Rising 2 and 3, I believe, had some ways for things to carry over upon like your deaths and your like inventory carrying over to like your subsequent playthroughs if you retry. So I don't know what they're going to do for Dead Rising specifically, but it would specifically be cool to see something implemented on that because Dead Rising 1 is pretty long and like punishing is what I would say that this game is more like. It's pretty punishing in terms of you being behind on the timer and not meeting certain requirements, especially like early on because you're not really acclimated to where things are in the game, like the items and where you get bonuses, like the juices and vehicles and things like that. Early on, you don't really have access to all that. So it'd be really cool to see them implement some ways for that to be a little easier for early players. Because as a kid, when I played that when I was like 13, it was definitely pretty hard to understand early on without having having to look things up and all that. And then later games made that much better. Dead Rising 2 made that so much easier with like a much better map system. I remember the map being so much better. And then Dead Rising 3 was just even greater with its open world, which was, I think cut back by the time that Dead Rising 4 came into, the playable hands. The exploration on that scale definitely, was held back. And I think that was the biggest downfall to it because Dead Rising 3 is great. It has one of the greatest like uh, game modes that I remember in Dead Rising. The multiplayer was phenomenal. I remember going back repeatedly to Dead Rising 3 multiplayer, I believe. Maybe I'm thinking of Dead Rising 4. It was like very arcadey. One of them had multiplayer, but I know Dead Rising 3 as you play as the third character, Harvey or something. He's like a mechanic. It's been so long. I haven't played that game since it was a launch title on the Xbox One in like 2013, maybe 2014. It might have come out like a year later. But I have not. I played that game once. Dead Rising 1 and 2 I played multiple times, but Dead Rising 3 was only ever completed once by me, and I didn't even finish 4 or anything else after that. I don't believe. But 3 was cool because of that customizable building, or like not the buildings, but the building the vehicles and then the weapons and stuff. That was so great in that game. I don't remember many of the psychopaths. Like there's like a samurai guy, and I think there's like a wrecker crew team. I think maybe there's DLC for Dead Rising 3. I really haven't not sure. But Dead Rising Remaster, Deluxe Remaster, certainly is going to be a good excuse to go back and replay the Dead Rising experience. So I'm very much looking forward to that. That's the biggest surprise because Capcom seems to be trying to remember a lot of their old titles and bring some love back to them. That seems really great. Speaking of, they are doing a crossover with Path of the Goddess, where within Path of the Goddess's demo, if the players reach a certain amount of requirements or whatever like that, you can just look it up. But you cross over with the Okami games, and the Okami stuff will cross over into the main game if those requirements are met. Okami is a older Capcom game from around like 2006, 2007, I believe, from the GameCube and Wii era, and I remember playing that once, like renting it at Blockbuster, and I never finished that game specifically, but I remember being fun as hell. The art style is super cool, like Japanese style calligraphy painting kind of art style. I think it's very cool looking. And Path of Goddess is very much in this kind of similar style like that. Very much more like a trippy kind of Japanese like Neo style game. But the gameplay looks great, and I'm excited for it. I don't know if I'm gonna try the demo, but I am excited to see that Okami is getting like recognition in some way, especially from other franchises, not just specifically like Marvel vs. Capcom and other things like that, but even crossovers with the newer franchises, Path of the Goddess. That's a great way to promote a new game, is to have your new title crossover with something. It makes sense. I don't know why they don't have that with like Street Fighter and other games do all that, but they do that all the time with some other franchises. But out there, new titles, which I think is a great excuse to get new players into newer titles. Path of the Goddess looks really fun, very much like third person action Pikmin kind of game. Maybe like Ninja Gaiden Pikmin, but I never haven't played it. I would like to try the demo out, but I'm kind of tied down on other titles I'm trying to play through. But Path of Goddess does look fun, and they also showed off, or not showed off, but they talked about Resident Evil 9 and Resident Evil as a whole, where they compared, their two biggest zombie franchises, Resident Evil, which is much more of a horror action franchise, and Dead Rising is much more of like a comedy for the most part, like a comedy horror like sandbox game. You're not really here for the story in Dead Rising for the most part. You're more here for like the goofy antics. And Resident Evil, obviously, it's all story and action and in your face the whole time. So I think that having that parallel was really cool for them to go off of with the directors and the producers. The videos online, so everyone wants to watch it. It certainly seems like they're taking that same approach to when they were remaking the Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 1 remake, 0, and then obviously the newer Resident Evil 2 and 4 remakes, that they're trying to keep the original feel alive while not just adding in some newer stuff, but making it a lot more friendlier to newer audience and the modern audience right now for a game that's Dead Rising came out 15 years ago. It was a 2006 Xbox 360 launch title. So it's almost 20 years old. 2026 will be 2 years from now. And they didn't really go off about anything else with Resident Evil 9, only that we should be expecting something soon, which I would say maybe Tokyo Game Show, which I think is usually September and October, or like Game Awards around December sometime. So around those, months, we're probably going to see something on Resident Evil 9. And I wouldn't be surprised if it probably kept up with the Ethan, line of stuff. Maybe his daughter from Resident Evil 8. I haven't played the DLC yet for Resident Evil 8. I would really like to go back and do that, but I'm certain it'll probably bridge into that somehow because that's like a trilogy kind of idea, and I think that pretty much fits. I'm intrigued by the whole Ethan story because it didn't really kind of wrap in my head from what I remember about how it ended in Resident Evil 8. And then from Resident Evil 7, it just felt like it was a story that was kind of forced anyway because of it. Like these don't feel like Resident Evil centered stories. They're not like, like Umbrella Corps is doing something and, there's like this big political intrigue to these countries like suffering. It's very much like a more like somewhat personal story, and maybe I'm missing a lot of the lore from just playing the games of 2 or 3 years ago. But I'm so excited because Resident Evil is a great horror video game franchise, and it's amazing to see that they've turned it around since the iterations of Resident Evil 6 and some of the other darker Capcom titles that were, muddied in the water over the years. But they've turned it around with all their stuff, and that's what makes me super excited for Dead Rising Remaster because that is one of my most favorite Capcom games like ever. It's one of my first Capcom games next to Mega Man or Street Fighter, and that's just really great. It's cool to see them keep up with that. And not even to mention the glorious Marvel vs. Capcom arcade collection that's coming out later this year. I mean, that's a pre-order for me immediately. I'm going to be getting that on the Switch, and I'm going to be trying my best to be finishing as many arcade modes, what's in there. I don't think many of them have like story modes, but they should be all arcade modes. And I just want to experience that entire franchise. I've only played 3 and Infinite, and I like those games. They're glorious franchises that are like one of the best crossovers in history. I don't think anything ever competes to that level of crossover like popularity next to something like Fortnite, like Mashup or Smash Brothers, because those like have tens upon 20 or so like franchises together in those titles, and this is just Capcom and their stuff, and then Marvel, but like we don't see that anymore. We don't see things like DC versus Mortal Kombat, or we're not getting like Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, or we're not getting like any of these other like cooler franchise crossovers to some degree. And I'm so excited to see that Marvel vs. Capcom's coming back, that we might potentially be getting a Marvel vs. Capcom 4 in the future if this game sells well enough, if there's enough modern intrigue and popularity for this, and I think there will be. I think there certainly will be because some of the titles in this collection have not been available for a decade, over a decade now. The Punisher game, I don't think it's ever been, available since before the year 2000. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 has not been available since, 2008 digitally on the PS3, I believe, or maybe they had a disc version as well. But you still cannot play that unless you got the what was released like 2 or 3 years ago, the arcade specific cabinet, which was $600. With nobody in their right mind is gonna buy a $600 cabinet for something they might play for a month or two at most. I mean, like hardcore fans obviously would love that. I would like to have that, even if it's like a set piece. That'd be really dope. But that $600, no way. And for this, I imagine it to be a $40 arcade collection port on the Switch, PS4, 5. I don't think it's on Xbox. I think they omitted that. And then Steam, which is great. That's just awesome. So hopefully Xbox will get it eventually. I know that like, people are probably still conscious about whether or not they want to buy console or PC. Just buy with your wallet. Purchase with your wallet. Be conscious about like the product you're buying. Always wait like a week or 2 weeks if you ever want like to justify buying a game on launch or pre-ordering a game. For me, I always just pre-order games that you know, that look great to me at the time, or that are like franchises that I've just beloved and would like to try out. Because like things like Gears of War and Dragon Age that are coming up, those are immediate purchase to me. Even though I didn't grow up playing specifically like Marvel vs. Capcom, like some other people have, I do enjoy 3 and Infinite, but franchises like Gears of War and Dragon Age, Kingdom Hearts, sometimes Pokemon, certain franchises, just like I grew up with them, of course, they're going to get priority, and those are games that I personally justify pre-ordering. So I'm going to pre-order Dragon Age, Gears of War is going to get pre-ordered. Shit, I already pre-ordered Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, the digital deluxe, because it comes out on my birthday, so that's what I want that. That's what I want, and that's going to be really cool. So yeah, speaking of Dragon Age, a few things have come out since its initial reveal. I think a month ago or a few weeks ago, at E3 or whenever BioWare did their showcase, or I think it was Xbox specifically. But I have been reading the Dragon Age first novel, The Stolen Throne by David Gator. About 200, almost 300 pages in, so almost done with it, and I'm loving it so far. It's pretty cool to see Logain and Merrick's like relationship kind of butt heads early on, especially because of the context of the game. I still find that like this kind of friendship or like relationship is really intriguing. And there's a sequel book, I believe, after this called The Calling that takes place just before Origins begins. It's been a while since I read like the back flap, but I've always assumed that these two books were always together. But I'm trying to get it from the library, and I haven't found a way to get it, so I'm probably just going to order it from Amazon or find some way to read The Calling soon because I'm very intrigued to see how all of the events like tie together in this series and how it plays into the games. Because the origin game for Dragon Age doesn't give a whole lot of context on the Merrick Logain situation. You don't specifically get that. Logain just kind of portrayed as this guy who would betray somebody, and that's basically what it is. It's very early on in the game. It's not even prevalent to the overarching story. It just kind of happens. So it's really cool to have this kind of context with the books, and that's why I love reading books like this. You get these kind of extended stories and just ways to enjoy the franchises. So like it's really cool to see like all of these little nods to like places and small characters because they already have a little bit of that in Stolen Throne already, which is already really cool. So shout out to David Gator for being the lead creative director on Dragon. I don't have the book in front of me. I just didn't bring it up, but he worked on Dragon Age initially. Like he's on the that's on the cover. That's amazing that he's like one of the original people working on it. And I don't specifically know if he's working on Dragon Age 4, Dragon Age Veilguard, as it goes by now. I'll have to look that up just to verify. But yeah, he might be on it or not. Which, if he's not on it, that's pretty sad. I hope he, is not on it for an amicable reason. Not something that's like soured or, negative in any way, of course. But obviously, I am excited for Veilguard, and because we have some news on like how, gameplay and I would say accessibility work for Dragon Age Veilguard. And I think that what they've shown off for right now is, with the context is okay. I think they sort of shown off classes that weren't specifically just the rogue. They sort of shown off someone doing spells and like a warrior stuff, or like they sort of showed off like more fights that were just more than you fighting two enemies and then just like a big flashy boss. Like that game does need some work, and I hope that it's gonna get the touch ups and improvements that it needs. Hopefully, the delay is gonna be in the future. But back to Dragon Age Veilguard with the options of gameplay, they have various difficulty options that you can choose, especially like story and beginner modes. And to that point, you have like very customized design to your difficulty, very much in the vein of games like Baldur's Gate 3, where you can turn off certain aspects of the game, like I think damage and death and stuff like that, which is very cool. I think, specific options like that give some, you know, very much great replayability to a lot of games on top of its accessibility for a lot of new players and people with specific handicaps and disabilities that make it hard to just pursue an interest in games. Obviously some games are much more like hand-eye coordinated, reactionary, and they're a lot more like time sensitive. And like, there's a lot of things that go into video games, and they're not all made towards everybody's personal experience, of course. You can't have a RTS game, right? Like a real-time strategy game, have like a way for you to micromanage your own way of like playing the game. Like you have to be there, attentive on the game, and react to it to other players if you're playing on like a multiplayer server or like a multiplayer match, you physically have to be there. Like a fighting game, you have to do that, and like you can't be an AI and a bot. That's not how that works. You have to be like physically present for a lot of these games. And so like just for single player games, I think that aspect is totally true, you know. And Dragon Age Origins is a real-time strategy game. Originally, I would call it that, like a CRPG. You have some aspects of real-time combat, but you get to slow down, take your time and choose your actions methodically and meticulously, which I think is really good. And I would like to see that aspect kind of delved more into Veilguard, especially with like the companions and telling them what to do, because you don't have that option. It seems like in this game, it didn't really like show off that very well. I'm not really going to watch the video again. I personally just would rather play the game and just see what's going to happen. But you know, Origins had that, and that was in 2, and that was in Inquisition, and that's just one of the coolest things about it is that ability to customize and view the battle the way that fits you. So having options like decreasing, things like damage or mitigating things like death for certain aspects of the game, I think would make it a lot easier for some people. Now I'm not saying that this for everybody. This needs to be thing that should be optional, toggleable. You should be able to go into the options and say, I want to play the game using this way, like extra timing for parries, like slower text for like audio dialogue or something like that. Whatever makes the game easier for people to play, and they're not having to like just quit or look up solutions on YouTube or anything like that. I think that these ways of making games easier is just far more better. And the article even says that the person working on it that says that none of these count as like cheats. There's an option to make sure that uh, players of all abilities can show up and play the game, which I think is great. That's awesome. I am intrigued to see where the full extent of these options will go because I don't want like a lot of the core experience of what Dragon Age used to be. Dragon Age is a game where like you make a character, and even in Origins you have choices where you have a background, and those choices influence how your character is viewed and the options available to you in the world. So things that are like I think a little more like topical today, like playing a character's sexual orientation or how they're referred to as in game, I think don't matter like in game. I think personally in a fantasy game, the character should be referred to or do whatever they want in whatever regard. I don't think that it should be matterable to that degree. I'd like Dragon Age to just be a game where I can make a character, and the way I make that character is how my character is being able to interact with that world. If I play a mage, I want them to be treated like a mage in Dragon Age. They should be like ostracized because of their magic, because they're different, they're weird, they're dangerous. I mean, to a degree, like elves in this world are dangerous, and they're called things like knife ear. They're not trusted. They were slaves within the world of Dragon Age. That is just the world that is, and that kind of identity needs to remain in the game. It just needs to remain, and it should be there in a tasteful way where it doesn't feel like it's being either forced in because of an agenda or taken out because of an agenda. It should be there because it feels right, because it's already there. You should be able to meet characters who have opinions and ideas and reflect on those with actions within the game. And as a character in an RPG, you should be able to do that. They did not show off, particularly from what I saw, anything regarding like player choice or like that kind of personality customization that you can have within that game. They did not show that. And to me, that's a big misstep. That was a big core of why people like Dragon Age, and that is an absolute major core of why people super enjoy Baldur's Gate to a degree. That's a big single player game. Not even to mention that Baldur's Gate 3 is a multiplayer game as well. It's a cooperative game. To be honest, that is the entire gameplay perspective that I would envision for a Dragon Age game. And Dragon Age Veilguard does not meet that expectation for me. It doesn't even like have that within the game to any standard that we saw. You know, it doesn't have a way to overview the world map with like your character camera, the 3D perspective. You can't see the fight as it's happening. You're following the character third person over their shoulder like it's a Dead Space third person Gears of War game. I think that's not a very good idea, especially to try and not just get new players for a game that's 15 plus old again, 15 years old again. Obviously, this game's old, but you're trying to bring back that audience of people that are from, 15 years that have been playing these games forever. We're waiting for Inquisition. We've been waiting since Inquisition. It's terrible that we have to see this game be presented in this way. Because Inquisition, I remember being phenomenally excited based on what they shown off. They showed it off once, I believe, in the same year, and everything that they shown off in that trailer was in there. They had all three classes like shown off, playable, the combat versus the dragon, I believe, and then they had the keep and all the ways you can customize it, and even how your choices from the game can affect the keep, and overall how all that plays into it. It's just very worrying to see that, games are being taken into certain directions that are not consumer friendly, not player friendly. That's a very disheartening thing to see, and it's just very worrying as like somebody who just loves playing video games, because I think that playing video games as an individual is such a great way to just, spend my time, find new challenges for myself. Like I love that. I'm playing Final Fantasy 14 specifically right now just to beat these bosses, do them specifically on my own, if that's through like the MSQ, or doing them with parties and friends and my free company on the Duty Finder and all that kind of stuff. I find that super fun. Games like Returnal, where you're fighting ridiculously hard bosses and trying to do things relatively as fast as you can. Cuphead, Halo on Legendary, all these kind of games on these difficulties is so fun to me. That's why I love games. And to a degree, games need to be made in a way that's friendly to players with their time and their money, like the money and time you put into games. Obviously, that needs to be player friendly, and we're not seeing that. The BioWare has a very large like fan base throughout like the last 20 years, and they've kind of shat on them within the last 10 or 15. So whenever Anthem came out, and then Andromeda, which was a whole different story. But we're here now. I was surprised that we were even going to be seeing Dragon Age Veilguard this year, because it was like 2 or 3 years of nothing. Like a small announcement or like pictures, and they mostly mentioned things like Mass Effect Day, which was egregious. I was very mad on the Mass Effect days when they would talk about that and not Dragon Age anything. So, that's neither here or there. But looking forward to Veilguard in the future for what it's going to potentially have added and changed. I think what they've shown off right now definitely does not meet the same degree of quality, or innovation that the older games did. Because they're still fun RPGs. They're not like Skyrim, like open world quest level stuff. I don't need it to be like that. Inquisition was a very large game. It was 180 hours on its own, I think, without DLC or so. Maybe with DLC it was like more like 200. But you know, that was a very large game on its zones alone. Like the exploration, I remember taking a very long time to explore, and Origins was never like that. Obviously, 2 was scaled back to a smaller degree, but I liked that much more. The smaller degree with 2, where you're within the city and the story is very centered on Kirkwall itself. That was cool. I wish the city itself would have been changed a bit more. A bit more drastically based on your decisions. You don't really see that visually or cosmetically or like narratively, you don't necessarily see that. But Dragon Age 2 and the Kirkwall story with Hawk is very pivotal to how Dragon Age Inquisition is set up. So that's very important. And Inquisition, it could go either way with how that is like how that ends and is put into Veilguard. But I would still like to see how those games are made to be present into Veilguard, how those choices are present for us as players. Because I have choices that I've made from my first playthrough of Origins that I would certainly like to see reflected. A certain character in Origins, was killed for me, was actually killed for me when I first played Origins. I just chose to do that. That's just how it worked. And then, the rest of the game happened, and my choice carried on into Dragon Age 2, and then they retconned it in 3. And I wasn't uh, upset about it. I was more heartbroken just because like I would have preferred to have seen an option where this didn't happen. But because of that, it was just kind of meh. But Dragon Age Veilguard is coming out hopefully this year. with some improvements that they're hopefully going to show off within the future. And that's what I'll say on that. And I'm gonna try and read Dragon Age: The Calling before next episode. Somehow I'm gonna try and find the book between here and then. But and then after that, it's gonna be Dragon Age Origins at some point. And right now, we're going through Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, the Endwalker expansion. I'm finally entering it, and I did the Zodiac fight. I think we're about level 70, not 70, uh, 85 or 86 into it. We did the Zodiac fight, which is pretty cool. That was a really hard fight. There were some mechanics that were difficult to understand early on, just by like a visual standpoint. But that wasn't too bad. I liked that. That was a good fight. And you know, Dawn Trail has came out within the last week or so people are now just playing into that. And Final Fantasy 14 has seen the one of the highest like concurrent players since the launch of A Realm Reborn, which is kudos to them, man, for being one of the greatest like MMOs to just grace the planet. Because I'm loving it. It's so fun to see other players playing this game like a Final Fantasy multiplayer game, and I'm making friends in my free company and all that stuff. It's so good. There's even a capybara mount in the Dawn Trail expansion, so as soon as I enter Dawn Trail, I'm going to be gun hoeing it to the capybara mount, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on for there. But I think once I'm done with Endwalker, or during post Endwalker, I'm going to mix in some of the side content from the other expansions because I'm still missing out on a few of the blue quests and the side dungeons and even some of the Aether currents and stuff. I'm still very much behind. We're pushing at about, I think, 400 hours now into Final Fantasy 14, and that's pretty good for me, man. Maybe we'll be done with mostly everything by 500, Dawn Trail, at the very least. So who knows? I'm certainly excited because Final Fantasy 14 has been one of the fun experiences I've had. I've tried playing this game on and off for a few years, but this is the first time I could consistently like play it without having something interrupt me besides like work. I can get around, but school and uh like other kind of stuff would definitely get in the way. But now it's definitely really fun to getting into this, especially playing it on the laptop where I can bring it with me at certain places. I hear like the Steam Deck is really good as well for things like that. So who knows? But right now, Final Fantasy 14 has been really fun, and I'm hoping maybe to get out of the free company that I'm doing right now, and by the time Dawn Trail is a little more open to me, when I'm a little more into that expansion, I'll get a free company going, and we'll start getting some people from fans of you guys to try and do some of these raids and dungeons and some of the extra side content that I haven't been able to get time to do yet. So, be on the lookout for that. Things are going pretty slow. I'm trying to, keep up with reading a book or the book series and playing these games as much as possible. Final Fantasy is the big game, and I'm trying to not just do that, but play other games like upcoming is Marvel's Capcom, and then the Dragon Age games and Gears of War are obviously going to be coming up soon. So, hopefully Endwalker and Dawn Trail can be completed within, a month or so. I don't think it'll be that too long, but I don't want to stop, dude. I'm having a really great time playing Final Fantasy 14. It's so fun, especially like leveling up all the new classes and stuff. I think that's the best part about it. That's one of the things holding me back from playing Elder Scrolls Online because I had a class, when it launched, and I, got to level 50 base game, and I think we started the first expansion, whatever it was. But now there's a like a necromancer, not like an eldritch kind of character, like an eldritch kind of hard necromancer character that's out, and I think it came with the eldritch expansion a year ago or so. And I definitely want to play that because Elder Scrolls Online was certainly fun when I played it at launch. It had a few issues early on, but I had a great time. And I fear it's only been getting better and better. It's on its 10th anniversary right now, so really great for them. That's awesome. And Final Fantasy 14. Maybe once that's done, I'll just full send into Elder Scrolls Online before that goes offline because I don't want to miss out on these MMOs. I'm glad that I'm doing Final Fantasy 14, and I'll certainly get back into Elder Scrolls Online. But games like Star Wars, I don't think I'm ever going to go back to. I really don't think so. It seems like that game is dead. Nobody cares about it. There's no new like nothing's coming out for it, and it's just not getting the love that it needs for a Star Wars level kind of thing. You're not even going to do anything with it with like any new content Disney, like nothing. I don't know. That seems like a waste. Maybe like not even a console port or anything. It just seems like they just forgot about it. Like no one cares about it anymore. That's another BioWare game, like relatively. I don't really know who specifically worked on it, but it is another BioWare title. They were public, and goddamn, it's just a shit show. It's so sad to see Star Wars kind of be treated that way with some of its titles. And I like the MMO. Let me say that right now. I loved the MMO when I played it. It's probably one of the best MMOs next to like World of Warcraft, where you can just pick a class and experience that class's story that you want to do. Like you could be a bounty hunter, you could be a variety of Jedi and Sith. You could be a whole bunch of stuff in that world. I think that's great. It's very Star Warsy. It's definitely, dated. That's a 2011, 2010 game, maybe. It's definitely older than Final Fantasy 14, certainly. But damn, it's been a very long time since I've played that game, and I don't have the need to do that anymore. I just don't feel that. So, you know, for the future, keep a lookout on more Final Fantasy 14 news from me as I experience the MSQ and get to the end of Endwalker so we can start Dawn Trail. You have no idea how excited I am to be finally on the cusp of getting to that expansion. And, other than that, I've been playing The Sims 3 with my girlfriend Hannah right now, and that's been pretty fun. I haven't played a Sims game since the PS2. I think I dabbled into Sims 4 when it launched or was made free to play, and I didn't get very far into it, but I played Sims 2 on the PSP a lot. I played that game a lot, and that was really fun. And I never played Sims 3 at all. So we picked it up. Steam sale is going on, I think still right now. We picked it up a few days ago and we got some of the expansions, not all of them. Most of the like expansions that not only add cosmetic stuff, but like things to do, like missions and objectives, all kinds of new quality of life stuff, which is pretty cool. And we started making a house and getting like we're gonna start getting pets and jobs. We started working on getting our jobs through the computer. Like I'm right now, I am a police officer and she is a paranormal investigator, I believe. She's something paranormal. She's a paranormal investigator. We're kind of aligned in that with like the detective, police kind of stuff, which is kind of cool to be able to choose that on the cusp of getting the computer and buying that. The game is slow as hell. On this laptop, the loading is slow, and it's maybe there's like mods or something to fix that, but it's not abhorrent, not terrible, but you can certainly feel it when playing. Like after going back from games like Elden Ring and all other kind of stuff where the loading's been so fast. This just seems like, whoo, wow, having a hard time. So have you guys played Sims 3? Have you guys tried any of the Sims games? I know Sim City was a thing, and that wasn't really for me. And at one time I played My Sims, like the FBI agent or something on that, on like the Wii. I remember those games being pretty fun. The Wii My Sims games, those weren't terrible. They really weren't. They had like fun little mini games like fishing. Always love fishing, always. So Sims 3 has been really fun. Going to be talking about that more so in the future, but I think it's cool to go back and talk about some of these older games because Sims with the pedigree that EA was, they definitely kind of, fizzled out. I don't know the whole story on it, but we're not getting any new Sims games anytime soon, and it's upsetting that we're not getting any more similar games like The Sims. But that's just me. And other than that, I've been reading manga, of course. We've been on One Piece week by week by week. We're on One Piece. Chapter 1119 just came out, and we have that giant robot, the giant knight-like robot saving Luffy. I think his name is Emmett, and that's pretty cool. We don't know any backstory on how Emmett relates to Joy Boy or even if it's like maybe it's D or something. We really don't know. So I'm excited to see where One Piece is going. Of course, that's always such a great fun ride to just get through. Anybody who's not on One Piece, you really got to. I think One Piece is just one of those things where if you're not experiencing it as it's going on, it's definitely not as worth. Do you understand? Because like the mystery behind things like D and what the One Piece is, I think, is so much more valuable to the fan base and going along with the adventure. It's going to be a really different time for anime and as like a fan of One Piece as a whole when One Piece is done, when we find out what the One Piece is. So and I hope Oda lives as long in life as possible, of course, forever, and I don't want him to be left stuck doing specifically One Piece, but I would like him to see it finished. I would like to see him, get his masterpiece done with an ending that he pens. And I think that's enough that you can ask from a fan of any of these mangas, from any of these artists, and from somebody who loves Dragon Ball. And I watched Dragon Ball as it came out, episode by episode, from like GT. I know I recorded that shit as it came out on the VHS. I don't know how specifically old I was when Z was airing and stuff, but by the time GT was on, I knew all of it. I knew all of it. Dragon Ball probably not as much. I don't know how much was there, but like Z from the games and everything like that, man, I knew all of it. I was caught up for all of GT. I was there. So I think that kind of ride specifically is really special because as a fan going episode by episode, chapter by chapter, it's much more thrilling. It's much more engaging and just fun. I would hate I would hate to like be someone born later and then be like, "Oh, what's this pirate anime? It's like what's it called? One Piece? Oh, well, the One Piece is this, but you don't find that out until like the very last uh episode 1998. You don't find out until then. Like I would be so upset if someone like kind of told me that by the end of it. I mean, I don't know, like that perspective of it where like we don't know what the One Piece is specifically, if it's a mountain of gold or a picture of all of your friends. We really don't know what it is. And Oda's keeping that tight to the chest of whatever. So it's just one of those mysteries that I think you really need to be there and be present for. And that's kind of why I really want to talk about it on the podcast. When One Piece begins to get to its very final like run, its last few chapters, I want to focus as hard as I can on that for you guys in the podcast because I think it's going to be such a great moment. Such a great moment to be participating together, with everybody. One Piece like having an ending like some mangas don't even get that. We're waiting on Black Clover and Berserk, and some of them are penned by artists that are beloved. So yeah, as somebody who has watched One Piece up to episodes specifically 700 by the time Dressrosa came out, I'm on the manga. I've done the Wano arc, and now we're on the Egghead arc. And since we're on the manga now, it's a much greater ride. All the new revelations and like new twists and turns for the story, all the new surprises and the fights has just been so fun. I haven't felt this excited for an anime since being a fan of Dragon Ball, since like GT was out, and at the time Dragon Ball Super was out, and Dragon Ball Super doesn't have that same impact. Like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and then even GT had that world doom kind of idea to it. Like characters still died back then. Characters like were still on the table for death, and you don't see that much anymore. You know, like My Hero Academia. We're talking about that right now. Like My Hero Academia chapter 426 came out, and we have a lot of really cool stuff as a post-op for that. But hopefully, this isn't a spoiler for anybody. Um, but if you are not caught up by 426, let's just talk about this right now. But My Hero, spoiler alert right now, but like by this time, almost no one major dies. I would equate this story to be like a lesser like Naruto story to a way where like Neji, like the spoiler alert for Naruto, who hasn't watched Naruto, but like Naruto has been over for a bit. Like Neji dies by the time Shippuden is over. So like that's like the one character specifically who dies. I guess like uh Kazuya or the teacher for Shikamaru, I guess he kind of counts, and Jiraiya, those kind of deaths. But from what I remember from My Hero, we don't get a lot of deaths. There's not a whole lot of specifically major deaths, or surprising in any way. So that's what I kind of draw back from Dragon Ball is that Dragon Ball has those much more higher stakes. And then One Piece, they don't have death specifically, but one Piece is like a big idea, um, like game, like a long game kind of show where like all these things have been teased for so long. We're on 20 years, 20 years of like the manga alone, and things that have been sewn off 20 years ago have not been explained, have not been in any way like uh further expanded on to any degree. And we've gotten games, we have extra movies for One Piece, we have all this stuff that's going on. I would love a One Piece fighting game. Let's just talk about that right now. Would love One Piece fighting game. But yeah, for back to My Hero, you know, Um, there we had a whole bunch of other stuff for the Todoroki family having their really cool ending. I actually really liked that. That was very sweet. And then there's this little surprise with the lizard dude. I think the next chapter, 427, is going to specifically go into him and what he might do after now that My Hero's over. And we're not seeing much else, so probably around 4:30, 4:35 for My Hero, we'll see the full conclusion. We'll see like Deku and Bakugo like further along their lives from UA, and then we'll probably see the end of it. That'll probably be it. And I would love to see where it goes from here. I hope I've been saying this since I've been watching it as it started, but I want it to have like a Shippuden era to itself. I want it to have something a much more global because like My Hero is a world of superheroes, and there's very specifically some lore aspects that haven't been specifically talked about yet, like the origins of the superpowers and that golden child and how some of these powers work, especially with like One for All and All for One, because those seem from what we've seen tied to the origin of heroes. That's what we've seen so far. But I'm not gonna say that we need to find all that out like at the end of My Hero right now, but have another series, because these are kids in a very secluded time of just like being a superhero school for this story. Like it's very much just like a superhero school in Japan, and they're always doing things under like the guidance of teachers for the most part, and there's always that helpfulness of the teachers, and then like the political scape of it is not really there like yet because they're still kids, because you don't really have that. But once they're like the full-fledged superheroes, relative like adults, I think the story is gonna go from like a 10 to a 25, 30, like max. I think it's gonna be super great. And like whatever new superpowers or crazy fights we're gonna see in the future is just icing on the cake. I've loved My Hero for quite a while just because it's very simple. It's a very simple like superhero story. You take a kid who doesn't have superpowers, he gets superpowers, and it's just there. Everything else is just so much fun. I love all the side characters. Bakugo is like the best dude ever. Every time he's on screen, it's 10 out of 10. Big Bakugo fan. But yeah, that's My Hero. I'm always going to be riding My Hero, and we will talk about the ending of that soon. That'll be a very special episode specifically for the podcast, of course. And then, that's it for manga. We don't really have much else. Everything is on hiatus, or they're like take like 2 or 3 months to get chapters. So that's it for manga. And other than that, I've been watching House of the Dragon. We're just about starting season two, so I think we're at like I think season two is at only 5 episodes, so we should be caught up by the time next episode comes out. So gonna be talking about that in the future. And they even put out a trailer for Guilty Gear Strive for the I guess anime they're putting out, Dual Rulers. It kind of looks okay. I wish the art style was a little less like Guilty Gear Strive, the anime game, and more like Guilty Gear more like an anime proper, like the art style itself still seems like it's the fighting game Guilty Gear Strive with like the animated like 2D characters on top, like on the background of like a planescape. It doesn't really feel like an anime, but it looks cool. I'm certainly excited. I think that it'll be a fun way to experience the story, however they're gonna tell it, because the Guilty Gear story is wild. But other than that, that's about it for TV shows, anything like that. I'm certainly excited. So you guys need to, stay safe out there. Let me know what you're playing, what games you're playing, what books you're reading. What are you looking forward to in the future? Let me know what we should talk about for the podcast because I'm looking forward to more episodes like this. There's a lot of cool things to, talk about that are coming up, and I'm excited for what's going to be announced in between this episode releasing and when I'm recording the next one. So you guys be safe and, comment, like, subscribe, do whatever you got to do to follow up on everything I'm doing. You guys take care. Peace.